Welcome to the Influence and Impact Summit presented by Platform University.
Know that your story matters and that you have a message that the world needs to hear.
You can get your message to the end user now so much easier.
It can't just be about you. Influence is about others.
And again, it all goes down to serving your audience and making a true, real connection with them.
Hi, I'm Michael Hyatt. Welcome again to the Influence and Impact Summit presented by Platform University. I'm here with my very dear friend, Andy Andrews. And I just got from his manager this afternoon. If you don't know Andy, just listen to this. In the past 6 weeks, Andy's coached 5 different CEOs of billion-dollar corporations. He's coached 4 different college football coaches whose teams are currently ranked in the top 20. He's coached the Special Operations Commander for NATO, a songwriter who has had 5 consecutive #1 hits, 3 different pastors of mega churches, and has been asked to coach 2 different presidential candidates. All this in the last 6 weeks. In addition to that, Andy does a weekly podcast called In the Loop with Andy Andrews. He has 3 New York Times bestsellers, all of which I've had the privilege when I was at Thomas Nelson of being involved with. His work has been translated into 40 languages, and Zig Ziglar said that Andy Andrews was the best speaker he had ever seen, and I would agree with Zig. He was right. You can find out more about Andy at andyandrews.com, and I've asked him to come to the summit and share with all of us how we can increase our influence and have a greater impact on the world. So, Andy, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hey, buddy, I am thrilled to be here. Honored that you asked.
Well, awesome. I think your story is so amazing. I'd like you to just kind of take us through it. Where did you start, and how did you get where you are?
Well, you know, I think there's several different answers to that. I was telling somebody the other day, I think I've had so many different incarnations of what we laughingly refer to as my career. And I think that a lot of it has kind of culminated to have me do what I do. You know, I worked for a while as a comedian, and I toured for 2 years with Joan Rivers and 5 years with Kenny Rogers, and with a lot of different people. And so now speaking, you know, I told Polly the other day, I said, I don't know that I'm any good. I just think that not many people do what I do because I deliver serious topics with humor. And so it's something that evolved over time. But I tell you what, Mike, the biggest part of what I do now really came about as a part of a crisis really several years ago when I realized that I was so entirely normal that even the agencies, the speakers bureaus and all, they said, well, we can't really raise the price. I mean, you know, they pay us to do this and to speak, and so they say, well, you can't really raise your price because, you know, you're where the people like you, what people like you get. And I was like, well, what's people like me? And they said, well, you know, you don't have a gold medal, and you don't have a Super Bowl ring, and you don't have a television show, and you don't have a radio show, and you weren't the hero of a national disaster. You're just kind of a, you know, a normal guy, and stick to it, and like, whoo. And I've always thought that if Moses had had more time on the mountain, he would have come back with 11, because I think number 11 would be thou shalt not kid thyself. And I realized they were kind of right. Yeah, they're really right. I was kind of normal, and I said the same things that the Super Bowl quarterback said, but they would pay those guys 5 or 6 times more than they would pay me, and frankly, I said those things better, okay? But I finally realized I've got to prove value. I can't just inspire people. You know, when you encourage somebody, that lasts until the first crazy thing that happens in their life, or if you encourage somebody, it lasts until Monday if you encourage them late on a Friday. But if you can prove something to somebody, if you can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, something that they haven't heard or they haven't understood in a certain way, and they can harness it for their own reasons, then frankly, they ain't never going to see me again. But it's valuable, okay? Because I can, if you can prove something of value to them, and that has really changed what I do. And it's changed who I am, I think.
That's awesome. Well, what a lot of people may not know is that at one time, I think at about age 19, you were homeless. What was that about?
Yeah, well, my parents died when I was 19. My mom died of cancer. My dad was killed in a car accident same year, so kind of crazy. But I've always had the ability to take a bad situation and make it worse, and I did. I made some bad moves during that time, and ended up living under a pier and in and out of people's garages, which is not safe or smart, but I did. And this was back, nobody was talking about homeless people. That wasn't even a term anybody used back then, but this was going on with me. And I met an old guy late one night under my pier, scared me to death, but he was the first person ever to tell me the truth about myself. And when I say that, people think, well, what does that mean? Well, when you meet somebody having a tough time, what do? We give them cookies or put them on the prayer list or whatever, but rarely do we sit down with them and tell them things about themselves that might make them angry at us. And this is what he did. He really told me a lot about myself, and some of it I didn't want to hear, but of course, where am I going? I'm living under a pier.
And so how did you get out of that? How did you get from that to living a productive life?
Well, it was a longer process than most people think, because, when you tell about it on stage or, in the book, The Notice, or the very first chapter of that book, as you know, is totally true. And so when you tell about it, people think it didn't take a long time. But, now, people will say, they'll read a book or hear me speak or something, they'll say, oh, I wish I had met you 30 years ago. And I'm like, no, you didn't want to meet me 30 years ago. I wouldn't have done you any good. But it took me a while to really start to use some of the things that the old man told me and to begin to apply them to me. I remember one time he told me something that really took me a couple of decades to figure the huge value in this. And here's what it was. He said, most people live their entire lives and never figure out you can't always believe everything you think.
Wow.
And I've thought about this so much and realized how many times we think things and our conclusions, maybe they're not wrong, but they're incomplete.
Yep.
Because we stop there, there's more. And frankly, that's been one of the hardest things that I've had to deal with clients that I coach and people that I work with, because, you go in with somebody like these high-level coaches or high-level CEOs, and frankly, they are where they are because of what they know. And so it's tough to get them to shift a little bit unless you can help them understand that there is more. Yeah. There's more to learn. There's more to know. And so that has been a little trick that I've learned to do, I guess. I tell people, I say, you go in and tell Urban Meyer, hey, let me tell you what to do. And, oh, yeah, I played football in the 6th grade, so.
Exactly. That's awesome. Well, so now you enjoy this enormous platform. You're having all these great results. It's just been awesome to watch you grow. But I can remember back at about 2002 when you had written this manuscript called The Traveler's Gift. Right. And I would love for you to share with people how that began, because a lot of people tend to think that successful people like you just kind of came out of nowhere. You were an overnight success. You were born with a silver spoon in your mouth, and that's why you've got all these New York Times bestsellers and all these amazing speaking engagements and the opportunity to coach, billionaires. But take us back to 2002 and what happened before that.
I will, but I tell you what, Mike, I would be remiss if I didn't tell people. Sometimes people ask me, they say, do you really believe that anybody can do great things? And I really do. And it's not just theory for me, though, okay? Because people say, so you really believe the guy in the ditch can be successful? Yes, I do. Now, he can't get up and do it today, but the guy in the ditch can be successful because the guy in the ditch can change. He can grow. And I know that for a fact because I was the guy in the ditch, right? It was under a pier. And so this time with the Traveler's Gift, I really learned these 7 decisions. It's a story. And I learned these 7 decisions really from reading biographies when I was under the pier. And that old man told me, I was pretty angry during that time, and I made some comment about having to sleep under there in the sand with the sand fleas and the bugs and stuff. And he told me, he said, I know you think that you are just sleeping in the sand, but when you lay your head down tonight, understand God has you on fertile ground. Mm. And I look back and I realize that all that time I spent reading those biographies really helped me figure out what I was learning and what I was going to do. And so when I did write The Traveler's Gift, as you know, it was 3.5 years and 51 publishers turned me down. I mean, 51 publishers, to be clear, 51 publishers said what I had written was not worth putting on paper. And so, I would also want everybody to know that you are the one who published it, but I would really want everybody to know it was Gail that gave it to you.
That's exactly right. She very rarely intervened in my career on behalf of authors, but your sneaky manager, Robert Smith, gave her a copy of it and asked her to read it. And so she came to me and said, honey, I rarely do this, but you must publish this book. And I said, yes, ma'am, because I believe in the adage, happy wife, happy life.
Right.
And boy, am I glad I did.
Well, it's and just very briefly, I mean, I don't want anybody to think that I'm bragging. I've got a point here with this, but as you know, that book is in like 40 languages. It's after 12 years, it's still selling in hardback. It's over 1 million in America. It's all around the world selling, pro teams use, Super Bowl winners use it, prisons use it. It's just amazing. Corporations use it. The military uses it. But just remember when you hear all that, if you're watching this tonight, remember that 51 of the smartest people in publishing, people who really know what they're doing, said it was not worth putting on paper. And so what is it? And I talk to people, Mike, all the time who they'll say, well, I've written a book and I'm really kind of discouraged. It's been turned down. And I'm like, really, like, how many times? And they said, it's just getting turned down over and over and over. And I said, really, well, how many times? And I said, well, 3 times. I'm like, oh, over and over and over. I got it. And I'm like, come on. And so just understand that somebody else's opinion about your value and your worth is not the final word. God did not put a vision in your life about what you were going to do and how you were going to help people God did not teach you how to swim just to let you drown.
That's really good. That's really good. Well, what kept you, by the time you got to 30 rejections, because my own book had 30 rejections before one said yes, but what kept you going when you wanted to quit?
One thing is the 7 decisions, the 7 principles in the book, the last one was I will persist without exception. I'm like, oh no, I've written this book. I've got this thing about persisting without exception. Now I'm getting taught a lesson about it. But I always look for historical ties. Number one thing is I surrounded myself with people who would tell me the truth about my future as we saw it. Right, Robert and my wife, and I made sure that I listened to that. But the other thing is I love historical precedent. Okay, and so I went looking for historical precedent on other works, and I found that Gone with the Wind was turned down by 32 publishers. I found out that Rudyard Kipling, when he wrote The Jungle Book, publisher a rejection letter. The publisher told him, "I'm sorry, Mr. Kipling, you just don't have a grasp of the English language." When Dr. Seuss wrote his first book, they said, "This has no marketability for children that we can see at all." The Diary of Anne Frank, when it was presented, the publisher said, "Why would anybody be interested in the ramblings of a young girl?" And so on and on and on. And listen, if you're out there and you're writing something and somebody has said something rude or weird about it, all you got to do is go on Amazon, look at your favorite books, and you will find, my favorite one is, this is on Amazon, The Holy Bible. The Holy Bible. Somebody gave it a 1-star review, and they said, "The stories are okay, I guess, but the author needs to work on transitions." So, man, if they're criticizing the Bible, who are me and you to escape that?
That's awesome. Okay, so somebody listening to this may have a dream to write a book, and they were like you and like me before we ever wrote a book. What advice would you give them if they were sitting down with you over coffee and say, "Look, I've got this book I want to get published. What do I need to do?" And they haven't written it yet. What would you say?
First thing is start writing.
Okay.
Start writing. I mean, how many people do I talk to that have a book, that I have a book in me, and one day I'm going to write a book, and they've thought about it for years and years and years? Start writing. It's the critical key. And then I really think there's a couple of things they should do at once. One, and I'm not saying this because I'm talking to you, because I tell people this on airplanes a lot. Platform University. You have to, because you don't want to write a book just for yourself. I mean, if you maybe you do. Maybe you want to write one that your children read or whatever. But other people care about their children too. And if you care enough to write a book for your children, to guide them after you're gone, write something that my kids can read too. Okay? Yep. There is nobody out there living and breathing and walking around that has not learned something and knows something valuable that they can communicate. And so the other part of it is to get a real grasp on the value you create for others. Whether you're writing a book or speaking or starting a business. In fact, that's one of the easiest ways to start a business, which writing a book is starting a business. Speaking is starting a business. If you can figure out, what is your passion? What is, like, if you woke up if the world didn't think about money, if money were not a medium of exchange, and every day everybody just got up and was able to do whatever they wanted to do and wear what they wanted, eat where they wanted, travel, what would you do every day? What would you do? And so when you figure out what that is, your second task is, what value does that have for other people? I'm not saying how can you get a job with it or what can you write about it, because this is different. This really doesn't include you at this point. What value does it have for other people? And then the third part is prove it. Because once you prove that value to other people, you will never be without work. You'll never be without people clamoring to hear you explain. And just understand, if you would get your mind off yourself and what you think about yourself and your value of yourself, and if you can manage to get your mind on helping other people, to figure out a way to serve somebody and to create and prove value for them, you won't be able to handle the workload.
When you say focus on the value, do you mean helping other people get the results they want?
That can be, yeah. Okay. That absolutely can be, and to a great degree, that's probably an overarching theme of it, because people want results in their life, right? I mean, parents want results with their children, and businesses want that bottom line result. I find often, Mike, that people are are swimming in the middle of the pool, and very few people go to the very bottom, go to the foundation. There is something we've all talked about for years, and that's thinking logically to an incorrect result. And people do that, families do that, societies do it. And it can be aggravating, it can last a little while, it can cost a little money. It's rarely disastrous. But here's what's disastrous. Disaster is when we think logically to an incomplete result. And the reason is because with an incomplete result, we get results. We're getting results. You can be in first place and be guilty of thinking logically to an incomplete result. But because you're in first place, because you're getting results, we rarely think past that to the bottom, to the foundation. And the thing that will get us there is this little simple question that most parents, we had it knocked out of us when we were little, and that is the question, why? And here's something just to notice, is that we are prone not to ask that at all. But when we do ask it, we generally ask it about something that didn't work. Why? Now, why didn't that work? Now, why didn't that work like we thought it should? Now, why? But rarely do people ask why about things that are working.
Yeah.
And when we ask why about something that did work, you will often find another level or two.
I'll bet. That's a great question. Okay, I'm going to ask you a why question. I agree with Zig Ziglar. You're the best public speaker I've ever heard. I mean, it blows my hair back when I listen to you speak.
Well, you're very kind.
And I've followed you in a couple venues where I'm like, why didn't you put me before Andy? How could I possibly follow him? And I want to ask you the question, why? Why do you think you connect with audiences? What is it about your speaking that the people who are watching this could learn from and apply to their own speaking if that's the way that they want to express and have influence?
Right. Well, there are a few things. One is doing it a lot, having done it a lot. And doing that a lot, speaking a lot, is people ask about that, and I say, man, just speak. There's so many Rotary clubs and churches and so many places that you can speak. And you speak until your schedule demands you get paid, right? And that's right. The only way you can sort it out. But by speaking a lot, you will begin to notice certain things. And one of the things that, and I'm not a contrarian, but I do believe that if you want to have extraordinary results, you will not have extraordinary results doing exactly what everybody does, because everybody is not getting extraordinary results, And so we want to do something a little different. And so some of the things that I do on stage are things that I've noticed through the years that allow me to be a little different. Now, I'll gladly tell you what a couple of them are, but the conversational aspect of what I do, I think, connects very quickly. As a comedian, I learned that I wasn't necessarily the funniest guy in the world, but I could make friends with everybody, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's part of what I tell business people. You don't want satisfied customers because they expect to be satisfied. They paid for it.
That's right.
You want ecstatic customers. And satisfied customers don't provide great word of mouth. And so I want an audience that is ecstatic. And people love their friends, okay? And so I realized that when I first started getting booked, that there would be people better than me, but if I could make friends with somebody, people, they'll give you a shot because you're their friend, right? And
right.
Then you extend that to an audience. And I just make friends, and I do the opposite of what normal speakers do. I spoke to the National Speakers Association a few years back, and a whole bunch of them came up afterwards. They teach speaking there too. And a whole bunch of them came over and said, "You do everything they tell us not to do." And And I was like, oh, really? I'm sorry. But I want to keep their attention. And so I'll walk out in the audience. I'll stand up on a chair out there and, I'll pat people. And here's a huge one, Mike, is smile while you talk.
Yes, sir.
Smiling while you talk. Man, that is amazing because you smile while you talk. People can't help it. They just can't help it. They'll smile at you. And then you get that little nod, smile and nod. Right, you know what I'm saying? I mean, people will smile and nodding, they can't say no to nothing, and so that is a huge thing one-on-one, and so it is obviously a huge thing in person. And you didn't ask for this, but here is a little hint, okay? And that is, if you're speaking, and you know this, Mike, I'm telling everybody else something, but if you're speaking, make sure your audience is close to you, okay? Because when they put you in a position where you are 20 feet away from the first row, you don't have conversations 20 feet away from people, okay? Yep. So that is where my signature thing really kind of got started. Was, we would try to get these people, put it in the contract that the first row had to be 6 feet away, and they just wouldn't do it. And so I can't go into these venues and go, hey, you read my contract? I mean, I don't do that, So I said, don't worry about it. I will go to them. And so I'll just walk off stage, and I'll go down to the first row. Because then you can have a conversation with people, but you cannot have a conversation 20 feet away from people. And so I try to control that as much as I can. And if people are scattered out, I'll get out there and walk among them. But here's the big thing. If you're going into places, don't let them put up too many chairs. Right? I mean, you would much rather, if you put 100 people in a room that seats 80, there is excitement. Oh my gosh, look how many people are here. But if you put 30,000 people in the Orange Bowl, nobody came. Nobody even wanted to be here.
That's exactly right. Okay, I want to comment on smiling. So I got told maybe about 4 or 5 years ago when I decided to do speaking full-time, my manager said to me, he said, you have got to smile more. I mean, look at Andy Andrews. Look how he smiles. He literally worked with me for 2 years. He would stand in the back when I was speaking, and he would do this, trying to indicate to me, smile. And I've worked hard on it, and I think I'm much better than I used to be, but you're exactly right. People can't help but smile, and it makes them feel good.
Man, if you'll take 10 seconds every time you're in the bathroom, just for the next 3 weeks, just 10 seconds of your time, 5 seconds of your time, and talk to yourself in the mirror, okay?
Yep.
Just while you're right by yourself, because I want people to see how they look, because I want you to look like you want to look. I'm not saying to look like a moron or to stretch your lips over your ears or anything like that. Just get your countenance up, get your eyebrows up, get your the corners of your mouth up, and smile while you talk, because when you do that, you will be shocked. You will get better service in stores, in restaurants. People like you. There's feel like you're friendly. You make them feel good. And speaking, it's an immediate connector.
Is there ever a time when you feel fear? Like whenever you go on stage, do you ever feel a little bit of fear, or is that like something in the distant past? You're raring to go. It's not a big deal anymore.
No, I think that I do sometimes feel the pressure of getting the message across. Sometimes I feel like I really want to help these people, or people are in a situation where I feel like I can, and I want to make sure that I do. Occasionally I get nervous if the audience is spread out over and they're not react. If they're spread out, scattered out in a place, they don't react normally, and so that's harder. I'd rather speak to 1,000 people than to 10. Okay, but I recently spoke to 6. And, when I work with these coaching staffs, sometimes I'm there in the room, there's like 12 guys, so you want to talk about, it's like steel people, it's like guys, I mean, women of faith, right? I did women of faith. I was their token guy, for a couple of years. And an arena full of women, that's easy.
Absolutely. You seem to be somebody that has just a tremendous amount of energy. But I know that there's days when you have bad days and all that, but somehow you've got command of your emotions. You can, you're like a thermostat, not a thermometer. What goes on in your head before you have to perform or before you meet someone that helps you to manage that?
Mike, that is an awesome question. If there is something that we could wave a magic wand and put into people right now that they know, this may be the most important thing that I say, and I'm so glad you brought this up, because we live in a world that has become obsessed with how people feel. I've worked with companies, they'll change policy for 25,000 people according to how 17 of them feel. And it's not just unfair, it's disastrous, it's dangerous, because the truth is that nobody really cares how you feel. And I'm not saying that to be funny, I'm saying that our economy, our system of relationships does not care how you feel. They only care how you act. From the time you were a little kid, every good thing that ever happened to you, not a single one of them happened because of how you felt. Every teacher who gave you the benefit of the doubt, every girl who liked you, every coach who said, you're starting. Well, that was your body of work. That was what you did. When you began to interview for jobs, nobody ever said, if I give you the job, how are you going to feel? Right? This is why we teach children manners. Or we need to understand this is why. It's because we know that a kid who grows into a 25-year-old adult with excellent manners has many more opportunities in life than a kid who grows into a 25-year-old adult with average manners. So the bottom line is that if I could wave a magic wand over everybody, it would be to make sure that you understand that you are created with a will that is stronger than your emotions. People care how you act, and you have the ability to act in opposition to how you feel. You can put that out. If there's one thing I want my boys to know before they leave home, if there's one thing that will allow them to make money, to have influence, it is that you can control how you act. And you can put a smile on your face. You can be cheerful. You can look somebody in the eye. The boys, for a while, they would wake up. Polly would wake up and they would, oh no, please, give me 5 more minutes. Oh, please, don't turn on the light. And I told them one day, I said, hey guys, listen, I would not request that you never get up that way again. I would not urge you to get up cheerfully if I didn't know for a fact that you could. You act this way with Mom, but when we're up at the camp and Uncle Sandy at 4 a.m. slaps the wall and turns the light on and says, good morning, boys, you get up and you go, good morning, Uncle Sandy. Now, you'll do that for somebody you don't even know that well. Do it for your mama.
That proves the point right there. Perfect. I've quoted you all over the country. In fact, I'm not even sure you said it quite this way, but as far as thousands of people know, you did. So I always say, Andy Andrews defines self-discipline like this. Can you make yourself do something you really don't want to do in order to get a result you really want to get? Is that close?
Yeah, it is. Discipline is can you do something you don't necessarily want to do to get a result you would like to have? That's just discipline. And it's important to know. It's important it's a historical perspective. It's a human historical perspective, looking back in your own life at how many times you have acted like you wanted to act. You have disciplined yourself to act a certain way. How many times have we been in our homes and we're talking, somebody said, how many times have I told you, I cannot believe that we're doing this again, and then the phone rings and we go, hello.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, we don't even know who it is. And we can immediately grab hold of ourselves. And so that is discipline. That is to write, to how we act, to learn.
Well, the thing that I take away from this is people who want influence, the most important person they got to influence first is themselves. Because if you can't influence yourself, you're not really going to be able to influence anybody else, and you're certainly not going to be able to have an impact on anyone else. So self-leadership is crucial.
It's crucial. And I mean, that's exactly right. And to remember that by working on yourself, you will become a person that other people want to be around, because nobody is influenced by people they don't like. Right? I mean, you can be bossed by somebody you don't like. You can be imprisoned by somebody you don't like. You can be ordered around by somebody you don't like. But influence, that's a different thing. You know, influence is the essence of leadership. That's the essence of it. And the essence of influence is agreement, not disagreement.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, well, listen, as we bring this interview to a close, I just want to ask you this question. Why is now such a great time for people who really long to have more influence and impact? Why do you think now is such a great time? Because I know you do.
There has never been a better time economically in our history. There's never been a better time to develop the influence that you have. And you can do this. You have so many tools at your disposal. I mean, what Mike is doing, if you're watching this, you're listening to this, what Mike has put together is that with Platform University to develop you as a person and to specifically design what you know and what you are and bring it forth. Listen, right now is the time that people are looking. People are nervous. They're nervous for their country. They're nervous for their finances. They're nervous for their children, the future of their children. They're nervous for their communities. And because they are nervous, and maybe unsure is a better word, because they are unsure, they are looking for leadership. They're looking for affirmation. They're looking for direction. And people of influence can give that direction and give that certainty and give that calm and do it in an awesome way.
Andy, thank you so much. You've been very generous with your time, with your wisdom, and most of all, just sharing your heart. I love that about you. And for those of you watching this, I want you to connect with Andy at andyandrews.com. You need to get on his newsletter list, listen to his podcast. It's all unbelievably inspirational. And read his books, The Traveler's Gifts, The Noticer, those two in particular, but he's got a whole bunch of others besides. And also, I want to encourage you to share the summit with the people that you love. As Andy was talking, I'm sure there were people that came to mind. We've got share buttons on this page. And don't forget, the more you share, the bigger opportunity you have to win a free membership to Platform University for a year, because we're going to give 3 of those away. So again, Andy, thanks for joining us. You've been terrific, buddy.
Thank you, buddy. You are the best, as always. Thank you.
Awesome. Welcome to the Influence and Impact Summit presented by Platform University.
Know that your story matters and that you have a message that the world needs to hear.
You can get your message to the end user now so much easier.
It can't just be about you. Influence is about others.
And again, it all goes down to serving your audience and making a true, real connection with them.